how to gain value for himself and how to gain what he wanted because he was familiar with where he was. Now, not only is he in a situation where Odin and Frigga are both gone, as he saw, he also, you have to realize in his eyes, this is all happening in like 1 or 2 days. He goes from thinking that he has the ability to conquer Earth to now being defeated by the Avengers, realizing that both his adopted mom and dad are dying and that he was supposed to die eventually. So he's lost his support system. He doesn't know where Thor is, but even more so now, going from a situation where he can only trust himself, he now is going to have to trust others, starting with Mobius, to gain what he wants to gain. And so it's just a complete 180, just a complete reshuffle of what's going to bring value to his life. And for all that to happen, even with him being a god, it being based on trusting sources he's never known before, it's such a complete change from what he's used to.
No, it's a good point. And I do want to talk about something that the episode does. Before I do that, I just want to talk about the very beginning when he leaves. The very beginning when he leaves and he talks about, hey, he leaves, I'm sorry, and then we just hear Thor. Like, Loki? Where's Loki? But almost like off in the distance, like fading away. Almost as if just to tell the audience, like, this is not like, forget about the Avengers. This is not an Avengers story. You know what I mean? Like something like that. And then I love the title, the Marvel Studios Fading to Green. That was awesome. That was the best. So anyways, but that was that. So, but here's what they did in this episode. And we're talking about, the change that he goes through and what he's trying to do. But one of the things they do really well is they kind of set up this idea that he doesn't know who he is, that he needs to kind of reevaluate who he is and really come to terms with that, right? And that's one of the things that Owen Wilson does, and he's almost like a therapist, right? And he just kind of keeps saying, like, do you enjoy hurting people? And he's like, well, I don't hurt people. And he's like, no, but you do. Like, you're not the god of mischief. Like, you hurt and kill people. Like you're not, it's not like fun. Like, you're hurting, And so and he kind of just keeps avoiding the question and avoiding the question and avoiding the question. And I think that, like, the very beginning of it, when he first gets there, and it does have some ties to Ragnarok, when Thor kind of gets to Ragnarok and he's got all those different things going on. Even when Stan Lee cut his hair and he has that weird contraption, almost looks like the contraption that was in the elevator with him. But either way, that first thing where he's walking through and he's like, "Can you confirm that you're not a robot and you do in fact have what most people would refer to as a soul?" And he's like, "Well, how do I know I'm a robot? Am I supposed to know I'm not a robot? Maybe I am a robot. Could I be a robot and not know about it?"
I found that moment so entertaining.
And and it was like, that was funny, but also that's kind of that first step. Like, they were planting that seed as to, like, do you really know who you are? Right. And obviously, like, it's played off as like funny at the time, but it's that first moment of, like, do you know who you are, and kind of reevaluating who you are. Right. And that's kind of what this whole episode is about, is coming to terms with the type of person that he is. And at the end, he has that conversation, right? He's like, I have to do it. And then he's like, well, I had to do it because that was the trick. That was the game, that I had to pretend as though I was in this, that I felt this way, that I had control, that I was in control, that I had all this power, when in actuality I really didn't. But that was the trick that I had to play on everyone. And I think that for him to realize that was a huge moment, and something that even when he made that transformation in Ragnarok, and and in at the beginning of Infinity War, he didn't verbalize it the way he did it in this first episode of Loki. And I just thought that was a pretty powerful moment to me.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, honestly, of, I think a lot of people, even people who would say, like, oh, I'm a big fan of Loki as like a character in the MCU, wouldn't necessarily say that like they they would like him as a person if you were interacting with someone who you came across who acted that way. But more than even moments like the one we talked about from Ragnarok, like more even more than those moments in the movies where you can kind of sympathize with Loki. I think this was like as I was watching it with my friend, I kind of looked at her and was like, this makes me like him already, right off the bat, episode 1, realizing how kind of damn like the type of we all kind of saw like the kind of way he was damaged of like not understanding his place in his family and in his community because he was adopted and a totally different, like honestly a different species than the rest of his family or the people he was normally around. And struggling to fit in, and that's something that's very relatable or identifiable to a lot of people who are watching the films. But I think the conversation that he was having with Mobius, almost like a therapy session, like you were saying, Pat, was kind of the way, almost showing how the side of like self-doubt rather than not fitting in, like there's a difference between needing to fit in but also like accepting yourself. And I mean, fitting in is kind of like the low barrier. It's more about belonging. Whatever, I'm a Brene Brown reader. But like I think this was the first time that we saw him really questioning himself rather than questioning everyone else. And that's what kind of is setting us up to like for Mobius to trust him, but also for like the viewers to do.
And that's a very big point to me. But Pat, I don't want to take away from you if you were going to say something real quickly.
Nope,
Sorry
you're
about
good,
that.
Sean. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say to Emily's point, we're talking about trust a lot, right? And there's going to have to be that trust, not just in terms of what we're seeing on the TV, but there's going to have to be trust points for Marvel going forward. Because because a lot of the characters that we have gotten to know and love over the past decade, the slate is almost wiped clean. And Marvel, unfortunately, has experienced some unpredictable things. Obviously, the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman. There's not as much of a setup in COVID as well. There's not as much of a familiarity as there would have been had we just went right into all of these shows and all of these movies right after Endgame like it was supposed to. The fact that there are less recognizable characters now and that there's been a delay since Endgame, you're putting more stock in the characters that you're bringing over from the first 4 phases into the future. And that starts with Loki and Tom Hiddleston. And not only that, it's about to get more confusing because I'm sure we'll get into this, but Loki is introducing time travel as well as the multiverse. So that's why Marvel has taken the opportunity to establish these series so you could start to trust yourself to understand Scarlet Witch, Falcon, Winter Soldier, and now Loki. But Tom Hiddleston, I feel, is going to be a big player for Marvel going forward because they have to have some type of consistent, recognizable person to go with. And that's why I also think that it was so good for them to have Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston have their back and forth for, even though it was a long period of time, they set up what this new version of Loki would be. They set up the trust game. They set up what was going on. They made sure to do that, and it was okay because of the chemistry that they had. But that's another big thing that I think that they did right in this first episode. They took time to set the foundation because that's exactly what they're doing across the whole Marvel universe. But they especially needed to do it with Loki because he is going to be one of the most recognizable figures going forward, and how they use him is going to be critical to keeping things hopefully as close to possible to the quality that it was over the previous decade.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do it, right? Because obviously with him being a variant, right, he can't kind of jump back into this universe, right? So it's not like he can come back in and hang out with Thor and the guys again. But right, with the whole Nexus, and we saw that Nexus thing again, right, kind of show up at the when they're talking about what's going on and everything, when they had that whatever cartoon explanation or whatnot,
Oh my god,
which
I
I
was obsessed with that. It
loved.
reminded me of the Jet.
Yeah, it was so good. It was so good, and and kind of the way they presented all that stuff. And I also thought too, like it's such like a hardcore, like crazy concept, and they're like approaching it like a Saturday morning cartoon. Like they're basically like destroying anyone that steps out of line, and they're just like talking about it like it's like they're talking to a child, which I thought was also kind of funny, but they had some. I mean, I thought it was very interesting. And look, I really do think that there are ways that they can kind of bring him in and kind of keep him going. But you're right. There's a lot of questions about where they're going from here, right, and how they're going to do it. And I do want to talk. I think that Kang the Conqueror might be in this show. If he's not in the show, I mean, they already announced that he's going to be in the new Quantumania, which is the new Ant-Man movie. But what's interesting is that Chronopolis, which I didn't realize, I missed it, but Chronopolis is shown in Ant-Man and the Wasp when they're leaving, when Michael Douglas is leaving. Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer are leaving the quantum realm. You can see Chronopolis just very, very quickly. And then Ravenna Renslayer, who is the judge that Loki goes to meet, she falls in love with Kang. And I mean, it's a whole long story, everything like that from the comics that I don't know all of, but like she, essentially falls in love with Kang. So that's an interesting part of it where he could be there, which I think could be kind of fascinating. He might be like the next big bad. You know what I mean?
No, that's exactly where
TJ
they're
left. I
going.
was going to invite him up.
That's
Yeah.
exactly where they're going. I think that the setup they're going with, not to reveal too much, is I think that there's going to be a gullible. I forget what's her name one more time. The judge.
Oh yeah, it's Ravanna.
Yeah,
Yeah, Renslayer. Yep.
yeah. I think that there's going to be a love aspect of things where Kang is introduced as someone that we don't realize is Kang. He falls in love, gains their trust, gains whatever control over this TVA that he needs, and that's when we're introduced to Kang. It probably is not going to come out until uh, um, Ant-Man, but I think that that's kind of.
Yeah, like I said, he's definitely confirmed for that movie, so we'll see what happens. But um, interesting. Someone's saying that Middle Timekeeper looks like Kang. That's possible. That's possible. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see kind of what they do and where they go from here. But like we were saying at the beginning, Emily, like there are no rules at this point, right? Like we don't know where they're going because there are no rules, And one thing that I thought was interesting as well is that when they show Loki, when they show his his write up or whatever, and again, this is credit to Screen Crush. I saw this on a video. I didn't actually see this, but his sex is listed as fluid, and so he has been known to like change forms and change genders at times as well. Where there's like a lady, I think it's Lady Loki or Miss Loki or something. I'm not sure exactly what they called Loki as a girl, but some people think that the bad Loki that's killing all these people is actually female Loki. And then that variant is kind of doing those things. So he has been known to kind of change before in the past. I just thought it was interesting how his sex was written down as fluid. Because obviously they know all things in time and they know that he can do that. So I thought that was kind of kind of an interesting little tidbit there that I didn't realize. And so we'll see. But
Well, from Norse mythology, like for instance, in the actual comics in Norse mythology, Hela or Hel is the daughter of Loki. Loki is the mother of other famous gods and goddesses. And so when I saw that other variant, I thought that it could have been basically one of the spawn of Loki, but as he was this spawn's mother. I won't get into too much unless we want to, because some theories